So welcome to the REI Awards Top 100 store briefing. My name is Jean McCabe. I'm not so new to REI, but I am new here to the team. So congratulations on making the Top 100. The standard was exceptionally high this year. We are actually celebrating 25 years of the awards, so it's actually a really special year to be involved in the process. So Matthew and Lynn are going to bring you through the process of entering phase 2. Matthew will give you an insight into the 5 elements and the structure of the judging process. He'll send you all your creative minds into overdrive as he gives you examples and some visuals on what he's looking for. And you'll get a real insight into the last number of years and the standard of the stores that progressed into the top 30. Lynn then from Customer Perceptions will explain their role in the process and how they can help do some of the heavy lifting as you move into phase 2. She'll also inform you about the platform that will be used to upload your audit report. At the end of their presentations, Lynn and Matthew are going to give you two clear routes that you can go in putting your audit report together. So on a personal note, I have been in your shoes many a time, often the bridesmaid and eventually the bride after about 5 years of going through the top 100 and top 30. I'm originally from willow.ie based here in Ennis. So it's important to note that the real value in this process is the learning that you gain as you go and getting that feedback on the reports from Matthew and building on it year on year. And each year you get to better and you get to move up that ladder and hit that top 5 and top 3 and store of the year eventually. So the report can seem a little daunting putting it together. So my email and my phone number will go out after this with the link for the webinar so you can watch a recording. Please don't be shy to reach out. If I can give any guidance or help to you along the way, just pick up the phone and give us a call and I can help talk you through the process. So in the meantime, I'm going to pass you over to Matthew Brown, who will share his insights and knowledge of what entering phase 2 of the awards looks like. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jean. I'm going to try and share my screen now. Hopefully this will work correctly. There we go. Excellent. I hope you can all see that. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me talk. We've given about an hour for this to happen. I'm certainly not going to try and take the hour. I'm just going to show you really what the process is, what we're looking at in terms of the judging, and some examples of award-winning store, great celebration of Irish retail at the same time. So hopefully you will find it useful, interesting, a little bit clearer, and hopefully inspiring as well. What I would suggest is if by any chance you have any questions that you think about, do feel free to put them in the chat box and we can then collate them maybe at the end of the hour and see whether there's any questions that need answering that I haven't covered already. But look, let me get started. I mean, as Jean said, firstly, it's 25 years of the Retail Excellence Awards. I haven't been doing this for 25 years with Retail Excellence, but actually I've been in business now for 25 years myself, running my business Echo Chamber. So it's a kind of big year, celebrations all round, but this is going to be my 6th year of judging the Retail Excellence Awards. And I have to say it is my favorite time of year because I am constantly blown away by how excellent Irish retail is across every single sector, from big players through to small independents. It's a great time to see it. I mean, it's a great time to celebrate it. And I'm hoping that 25 years of the awards, it's going to be the best year ever. The first thing to say, guys, is it's you're the top 100 finalists. And you've already won on service. You are only here because you have passed the first most important hurdle. A lot of the time people say, how do you judge a great store? And obviously service is massively important. And for the Retail Excellence Awards, we've always made service the most important category in that you can't even get through to the next phases unless you have won on service. So every single one of you stores, the top 100, you've already done fabulously on the mystery shopping. That is there. You are now ready to go into the second phase to be whittled down to the top 30 stores. And then the journey to the awards continues with, as I said, my favorite time of year, where I get to visit the top 30 stores around the country in a fast, furious 2,000-kilometer drive around the country. This year, I think it's scheduled for the week of the 26th of September, which is a little bit earlier than some of the previous years, which were in October, but that's the deadline for that. But to get to that top 30 road trip, we need a submission from you so that we can judge out of you top 100 which of the top 30 we're going to visit. And as Jean said, there are two ways that you can do that this year. You can either do the submission process yourself, you can take the photos of your store, you can write the comments, and you can upload them onto the Customer Perceptions portal, or you can get some assistance from Customer Perceptions who will come along and they will help guide you through that process to submit it. But ultimately, whichever one you choose, I will be looking at every single one of your submissions online over the next month, and I will be judging them and whittling down 100. It's always a very tricky job, down to the top 30, and then we'll be visiting those top 30 stores at the end of September, which will then lead us over across to the final awards at the time. In terms of helping you to do that submission, whether you're going to do the submission yourself, and as Jean has said, I actually believe that doing the submission yourself is a really valuable part of the process. It's a really good time to step back, look at your stores, think about them critically, and think about them critically through the lens of the way that we're going to judge them, to photograph them, to make your stores look as great as they possibly can, and then to think about potentially how could you improve over the years, because as Jean said, this isn't just an awards process for 2023. Most of the stores that have actually won Store of the Year have been previous entrants before, and they have really taken it as an opportunity to improve, to tweak different things that they do, so that year on year they've got better and better. But certainly in terms of helping you to do the submission, after this, you're going to be given 3 different pieces of material. You're going to be given the Top 100 briefing PDF, which is this slideshow that I'm showing you now. You're also going to be given a recording of this presentation of me talking, and we're going to send you out a Word document which illustrates through these 5 elements and what we're looking at in terms of how you photograph the stores, what are the things that we want you to photograph. And I'm going to show you examples of that now. So, without further ado, the way that we are judging you top 100 stores to help it get down to the 30 stores is what we are calling the 5 elements of retail excellence. And for those of you that have done the process before, you'll notice that we've simplified it. In previous years, we've done 10 pillars. Now we've decided to simplify it down for this part of the process to make it easier for you to do it. And we've divided these elements into 5 key elements, which I'm going to run through with examples of great retail that cover those 5 elements from previous top 30 stores and award winners. And hopefully by the end of it, it will make more sense. So the first element, element 1 of 5, we're calling first impressions. And what we're really saying is we want to see, what do your customers see when they first walk up to your store? How are you managing that impression process? What does your shop front look like? What does the external area look like around it? How are you doing window displays? And then finally, the most important part of it as well is, what do they see when they very first walk through your store? When they look right in for that first time, that first impression is really, really important. So if we take it through, what does that look like? What are these first impressions? And what are we kind of looking at in terms of how we judge retail excellence? Certainly from the shop front, if you are lucky enough to have inherited a beautiful heritage shop front like Bewley's has on Grafton Street, by all means photograph it, celebrate it. We can see it clearly, and it is a fantastic world-class example of shop fronts. Great if you've got it. If you don't have it, I also have been absolutely blown away by the sympathetic approach that retailers around Ireland have had to their shop fronts, of seeing it as a way that, you know, a shop front isn't just the face of your business, it's also a face of the town. And Maguire Diamonds in Gorey was a lovely example of creating this really striking shop front alongside these traditional buildings that maybe look a little bit run down, and it actually shines like a diamond. This for me is a classic example of really great shopfront design. through the other side of it, again, if you're lucky enough to have inherited a heritage building, but also if you're lucky enough to have a shop that sits within glorious surroundings, please show us that as well. The shop front does not sit in isolation. So if you think it's relevant to show us how your shop is situated on the high street, how it blends in, how it adds value to it, absolutely take that shop. And so this is a classic example. This was a top 30 store from last year. Mrs. T's in the fabulous Ashford Castle, and it's a beautiful shop front in its own right, but also the external seating, the planting, and the setting overlooking the golf course is absolutely fabulous. So by all means, photograph with this type of thing so that we can actually see it. And I think the point that I need to make for this submission is, because I am doing the judging online and I'm looking virtually, I can't see these things for myself unless you show them. So I always say that in this phase, it's super important. If I can't see it, I can't judge it. So if you say, look, we've got all these great things, but you didn't take a great picture of it that's really obvious that I can see, then I can't judge it and you can't get the scores for it. So it's really important that you do that. You photograph things, that you make them look as great as possible, because it's about a celebration of it. And I'm also interested in elements that go beyond necessarily a traditional shop front. You've got the Echo store here in Cork, fantastic traditional shop front, brilliant. But what's also really lovely is in the evening when the shutters come down, they actually got a graffiti artist to do a custom mural on that. And then they have postcards inside the store, which then advertise that. Again, I thought was a really lovely touch. If that's something you're doing, absolutely celebrate it. One of the other things that's really nice, and it's been a great pleasure to see over the years as we've done awards, is businesses that have improved and updated their stores every year as part of that awards. And as Jean said, she had been entering the awards for 6 years before she finally won. This is another store that won Optician of the Year, Wild Atlantic. 1 year that they had this pebble dashed exterior, and last year it was delightful to see that they'd actually painted the entire exterior outside. So what they've done is treat this as an evolving process, so that you think, look, my shop front, maybe there's something I could do with it, and think about how you might be able to improve shop front over future years, even if you don't think it's looking quite as perfect as it could be. And you know, there's always room for improvement. And what's absolutely lovely, again, Fabiani is another fabulous business that, like Willow, entered many, many years. I've been seeing Fabiani almost since the beginning. And Louise, independent owner of what was a shoe shop and is now a fashion emporium, she has evolved the store over the years. So when we first visited it, had a fantastic shop front here in white, lovely coffee shop signage, which again, I just thought was a really lovely, gentle touch, a sort of clever piece of communication. So simple, so striking, so cheap to do in a way, very, very on brand. That was what we first saw Fabiani as, but over the years, Fabiani's increased in size, repainted the exterior and added exterior seating at the same time. Again, evolving the offer that you have and getting better every single year. And I think one of the most striking examples of a business that decided to totally revamp between 1 year of the awards and the other is Diamond Furniture in Dublin, with Will Diamond, who's a force of nature, super ambitious, super creative. This was the first time that we saw Diamond Furniture as a top 30 store in 2021. Fabulous exterior, but he wasn't happy with it. He said, I can do better than that. And last year, that was how he had totally reclad his shop front and exterior. Absolutely fantastic job. So that first element of first impressions, how do you create this wow factor when people walk up to your store? What do they see? That shop front, super important to photograph. The next element of first impressions is obviously window displays, traditional aspect of retail. Now, we know some people don't have traditional window displays. They don't have traditional windows. We don't want to mark people down around that. So there are lots of different ways that we kind of judge what a window display is. And one of the lovely things about window displays is, as the years go on around the world, we find more and more creative windows. My favorite time of year in London is Chelsea in Bloom, where for a week, all of the retailers around Chelsea create these unbelievable floral shopfront stroke window displays. Just a quick snapshot of what it was looking like in 2023. The theme was cinema icons. So the Ivy did a Wind in the Willows theme for their shopfront, entirely dressing their shopfront. Absolutely fabulous. Is this a window window display? Is it a shop front? Is it a hybrid of the two? I don't know. I don't care. It looks fantastic. This is what Ralph Lauren were doing in 2022, a wildflower meadow that spread out of the window display out onto the street. Now, I'm not suggesting you have to do this, but my goodness, if you did, how amazing would it be? And then threw over Belgravia doing the same thing in London. Just absolutely fabulous. You know, a window display that meets a shop front. But what's also been absolutely lovely over the years of the awards is to see the creativity in action with Irish retail. As Jean said, 6 years she was a bridesmaid. Finally, she was a bride. This was the year that it happened. Fantastic combination of shop front, planters, signage and windows. And Jean often set herself a task of €100 budget for the windows. And it just goes to show how creative you can be within limited budgets. So absolutely an example of what we would consider a world-class first example with windows. Funnily enough, the store next door, beautiful children's store, Bambinos, they did one of the best windows we ever saw, which was absolutely lovely, which was this this beetle that spread out of the window with hay coming out. And then this is what it looked like on the inside. Again, fabulous creativity with windows. And one of my other favorite windows from Top100 Murters of Ashburn, just showing that you can be creative and wonderful no matter what you're selling. You don't have to be a fancy fashion boutique. You can be a DIY store and still do amazing windows that don't cost the earth. Great example of that. This is what Top100 did. Absolutely brilliant. Full marks in terms of that window display. And if you, again, don't have a traditional window display, that doesn't mean that you're let off the hook. Avoca in Dunboyne, which was a top 30 store a few years ago, they don't have traditional window displays, but they do the alternative where they have 2 brightly coloured tractors instead, which are telling that story of the brand, of the farming, of all of that charming tone of voice. Absolutely fantastic. Which brings me to my final element of this first impressions. So we've had the shop front, we've got the windows. What are these things that we're seeing outside of the store? But first view inside is super important. You can have a brilliant looking store that you go and you wind your way around and explore. But if the first thing you see is clutter, mess, you don't get a great first impression, you are just not going to forgive that. You need to have an amazing wow sense. And I always say that if a customer walks into your store and before they've even taken a foot inside, they pull their phone out and they take a picture, then you know you have an amazing first view. And so in a way, this is the easiest section for you to take a picture of. All I want, whether you're going to self-submit or whether customer perceptions are going to do it for you, is I want you to stand at your front door and point your camera inside and take a picture of what you see. And if what you see looks as great as this, then you know you have a great first impression. This is Melloric's Pharmacy in Fermoy, fantastic store, regular winner of the Pharmacy of the Year in the awards, and absolutely a wow first bite. All of these particular elements, from the design, from the heritage architecture through to the visual merchandising of the pink bath, all of that coming together in one visual bite. Absolutely fantastic. But look, you know, if you want to be a top 30 retailer, you have to have great first bite, first view inside. Folkestone in Dublin, even though this is a temporary pop-up store, look at that as a first impression that you see. Dramatic, wonderful, great view. Again, we judge retail excellence based on these elements. And it doesn't matter what product you sell. If you're an optician, if you're a fashion store, if you're a food store, if you're a tech store, we are judging based on exactly those principles. And so Vodafone in Dublin, top 30 store a couple of years ago, fantastic shop front. But when you walk in, the first thing you see is this unbelievable digital screen. It is an absolute wow first view inside. Absolutely counts as that. Great stuff. If you're doing a sort of big digital entrance and welcome, by all means celebrate that, take that picture. This is what Vodafone were doing. So as I said, you know, this is the easiest part for you guys to submit. Stand at the door, take a picture inside. The more I can see in one shot, the better I can judge it. Holland and Barrett last year, Lovely store, great first view inside, exact example of what to do. Now, look, this is a small store, and in this case, you only need to send one picture of your first view inside. However, I am aware that some of you are bigger stores, and in the case of bigger stores, it may be that there are transitions within the store where a customer walks from one area into another and they get again a totally different view. And in that case, by all means, take a series of first view insides at each doorway that you go into a different one. And I give the example of Avoca as an example of a store, the Dunboyne store, that has multiple views inside. So the first view that you get when you walk in through from the car park is the beautiful florist. But then when you walk through into the fashion, that's the first view that you get. And again, you get the idea. This is dramatic, wonderful. This is setting the tone for the brand. It's creating an amazingly positive first impression. That's the fashion offer. And then when you walk through into the garden centre, this is again me standing right at that threshold and looking inside. And so I hope that makes sense. This first impression is all about what customers first see when they experience your stores, and it is super important, and that's why we've given it an entire element on its own. So element 2 is visual merchandising, and it's all about how you turn a product that sits on a shelf into something that's desirable and astonishing and an absolute must-have. It's where you get creative. It's where you can do art installations, where you do seasonality, where potentially the window display moves inside into seasonal inspirations, into hero product presentation, into stuff that products that are grouped together to make more sense. All of that is absolutely relevant. It's everything to do with product display, with props, with creativity, all of that. It's where art meets retail. It's a time to celebrate your creativity and seasonality. Windy Ridge, regular top 30 store. I know they've made it through to top 100. They do a fantastic example of this seasonal visual merchandising approach. This was a Halloween display they did one year. Last year, another Halloween display with a giant spider. You can see this fabulous creativity just put out onto the shop floor. But look, you do it with the garden centre, we can have that amazing artistic visual merchandising even with food. Garvey's Super Value in Cove, beautiful visual merchandising store, use of props with wheelbarrows and old pieces of furniture and astroturf, turning carrots and cauliflowers and broccoli into what looks like a portrait still life. There's no excuse for any product to be boring. And again, you know, I would love to see big wide photos of big displays, but equally, if you're doing lovely visual merchandising, even at small details, that's something that I absolutely want to see. And I thought this was a really lovely example of how detail matters in retail. This is Insomnia Coffee from last year with their muffin display in the counters. How do you make muffins look good behind a glass counter? Loads of people do it. How do you set yourself apart? Well, they've put it in a bakery tin so it looks like it's come from the oven, and instead of having a sign saying what the ingredients are, they've used little cameo pots wrapped with a little piece of string to tell you what flavor they are. This is a lovely visual merchandising approach, fantastic example of creativity, and it absolutely scores high. You know, if you're doing this type of thing, if you're elevating product, doing something interesting, doing something different, show us, celebrate it. That's absolutely what we're looking for. And again, as I said, you can make any product look great. It doesn't matter what you're selling in the world of jewelry. Rox Jewelers in Stillorgan doing these beautiful installations alongside the rings and diamonds. And through to furniture. You know, how do you elevate a furniture store, combining the design and the merchandising? Just 3 white chairs up on a black wall. How fantastic that is. The dressing of the frames along that. All of this. Expert, wonderful visual merchandising stuff we absolutely want to see. I mean, if you think, well, look, we're just doing functional product, you know, we've just got stuff on shelves. Stuff on shelves can also look amazing. And Petstock, who were the previous Store of the Year winners last year, are a masterclass in how you can make ordinary product look fantastic with amazing visual merchandising standards. To make dog food look this good is absolutely fantastic. They've done dog beds as well. excellent example of visual merchandising. And alongside that rigidity and fantastic standards of tidiness, they also have creative displays, hero displays on end caps where they've got specific themes dressed with interesting little props. And what I particularly loved was the display on the left there was actually a tree that was at the bottom of the garden of the store manager, and her partner cut it down with a chainsaw, and she brought it into the store and created this display around it. Fabulous creativity, unique creativity, a fantastic example of visual merchandising. And this is one of the reasons why Petstop won Store of the Year last year. So we're on to our third element. I hope you're still bearing with me. The third element is all about interior design. What is your interior architecture? What are the photographics? What's the lighting? What's the fixturing? How are you creating an experience for your customer that elevates the product into an overall brand experience? What are the stories you're telling? How are you using design to tell those visual stories? And again, the standards of Irish retail design are absolutely superb. They are world-class. Lifestyle Sports flagship in Cork, which was a top 30 store when I first did the awards. As I said at the time, Lifestyle Sports could sit quite happily alongside Nike and Adidas global flagships anywhere in the world, and it's all down to this fantastic themed design. Great thematic entertainment spaces, building personalization experience into each different element, creating a personalization area at the back of the counters, this fantastic dressing. There were a whole load of different elements of the Lifestyle Sports, but design was absolutely at the core of it. Through to Shannon Airport Duty Free, which is one of my favorite duty free stores anywhere in the world. Again, a top 30 store, using design to highlight the best of Irish design, a double story going on to create a wonderful environment. Great use of a sustainability feature here with this living moss wall behind the jewelry counter. And then really nice, what I call design stories. So the design story that you see here is this installation that goes along that's designed to look like pattering rain. And they've done that to tell the story of the wild Atlantic Way and the west coast of Ireland, and building rain in and making rain a positive. Fantastic world-class design. Absolutely what we're looking for. Please show us and celebrate it. And then through into some of the accessories areas as well. Absolutely superb. So look, design, really important element. The standards have never been higher in retail design around the world. You know, customers expect more and more. The other element of retail design, it's not just the architecture, but maybe some of the lighting, creating stories around some of the cameos. Please take photos of that and celebrate it. And then the other side of it is also celebrating a non-traditional cookie cutter approach. So Wild Atlantic Opticians, the store that I showed you in Kilrush that painted their exterior last year, their interior doesn't look like a standard traditional opticians. They've used found furniture. They've created this wonderful, unique sort of ramshackle house approach that's very, very charming. Again, absolute celebration. And then their gift store that they have upstairs, using found furniture to transform this tiny little narrow corridor into a bookstore, just using pieces of found furniture. This again for me is a classic example of great design. Really wonderful, exactly the type of stuff that we're looking for. And through to bigger budgets. Donnybrook Fair in Dundrum, one of the world's best looking food stores anywhere around the world. Fantastic use of this signature themed meat wall at the back. Beautiful counter design. What's also really lovely is the story of the particular space. It's taken from a bunch of converted workers' cottages, and they've kept the original architectural features from the original listed buildings, and they've built that into the design. And so if you have any elements of your store design that are heritage features that you are deliberately showing and celebrating as part of that store experience, please show us. Tell us about it, explain the story behind it. That's absolutely something that we're interested in. And again, you know, you don't need to spend the fortune to create amazing experiences. I love the fact that this is just done with wallpaper and maps. This is the Great Outdoors, one of the best outdoor stores in Ireland, even the world. They created an entire map area just by cladding the wall and the floor in an oversized ordnance survey. And then the changing rooms turned into this kind of ski lift approach design. Absolutely charming, fantastic approach to retail design. Again, creating an experience. And my final example, Kate and Charlie, a super charming independent children's shop in Tullamore. What I particularly loved was the fixturing had been done and built by the husband. It's a family business, a family affair. If you have that kind of story, if you have that kind of personal connection, again, show us, tell us. It's super, super important. So we're 3 of 5 down. I hope you're still bearing with me. The fourth element is all about communication. And by communication, I specifically mean written communication or digital communication that customers can see. So I'm not talking about the communication that your staff give, that the expert service they give. You've already won on that. That's already been covered. We know you offer great expert service and recommendations and all of that. What we want to see is if a customer walks into your store and for any reason they can't talk to a member of staff, what can they see as they browse your store? How are you telling stories about things? How are you simplifying ranges? How are you adding extra elements? How are you doing recommendations, expert solutions? This is all about telling stories, about communication, about expert solutions, and what you can see in store specifically. And I've got loads of examples, but I always love this as a specific example. Fallon & Burn in Dublin, we all know it and love it. Fantastic world-class food store. And I always use this as an example of the power of communication. Because how on earth do you persuade people to spend 22 euros on a bottle of olive oil? You can't just put it on a shelf. You have to tell a story around it. And Fallon & Burn tells stories about almost every single product that they have. And with every extra bit of information that you tell, you make the product that much more desirable. And so this is olive oil, but I love this particular shot because it just shows that there is no limit to how many stories you can tell about your products. Now, I'm not suggesting you have to do this. This may terrify you. I'm just showing there are retailers out there that can write a piece of storytelling about every single product that they have. There is no limit to it. This is what Fallon & Burn doing. Fantastic example of storytelling around point of sale. Again, it's not just the stories you tell, it's how you tell them, how you present it. Garvey's Super Value in Tralee, which won National Store of the Year 1 year, did it because their signage was handwritten by a member of staff who was actually in accounts, but she was a very talented artist. And she did this beautiful, unique, handwritten artistic signage around a bunch of different products, locally made, whole recommendations on why duck eggs are good, elevating product, fantastic communication. So it's not just the stories you say, it's how you present it as well at the same time. Then through to how are you telling stories about your brand? How are you telling stories about how you find your products? Kay's Kitchen in Blanchardstown showing graphics across an entire wall of the entire process that Bart does from choosing his coffee, how he goes to suppliers, how he does that. All of those relevant communication. We absolutely want to see that. Through to real pictures of where Kay started and real stories about your brand. All of that is absolutely relevant. If you have wonderful, true stories about who you are, what you do, why you're passionate about what you do, absolutely communicate that. Talk about it, show it, because it's charming and it engages and it creates a totally different way that customers interact with your brand. We want to know about makers. We want to know where products come from. Kilkenny have always been fantastic communicators. They have their Meet the Maker communication range with a striking orange graphic approach. They're marking out on the map of Ireland where the product's from. They're telling stories. World-class example of communication. Absolutely great. Through to easy living, top tips, recommendations on how to choose a sofa, how do you choose a product, how do you do all of that? Again, great example of communication, through to the great outdoors, using traditionally underused space. So this was a door that went through to a stock room. They put a graphic on the front with helpful advice on how you choose walking boots. And then even at a point of sale display selling waterproofing, they actually have a QR code with helpful YouTube tutorials on how you reproof a waterproof. Really helpful, adding value to that shopping experience. Great example of communication in areas that maybe you wouldn't have expected. Absolutely world-class. Through again to this idea of you as a retailer being an expert. How are you communicating your expertise, your recommendations and helpful advice to customers on stuff that they need to know or they don't know they need to know? I thought this was a really lovely example of that kind of curated communication that Holland and Barrett did last year with a table of menopause favorites, with all the different products that can help people around that. Absolute helpful expert advice presented really beautifully, with the little pumpkins that were actually knitted by members of staff. Fantastic visual merchandising creativity alongside this helpful communication. Through to QR codes at point of sale, adding value with recipe ideas and recipe advice on how can you take the product that's behind the shelf and do something interesting and useful that helps the customer around it. Again, if you're doing this type of thing, make sure you show us that you celebrate it. It's great. And then over into the pharmacy sector, lots of helpful advice. What I particularly loved about McCabe's pharmacy last year doing it was that not only did they tell you about how good cholesterol tests are, but there was actually a call to action at the point of sale where you can scan the QR code and you can book an appointment right there and then. Really useful, helpful communication that then links digitally to a real world physical service. Really great example. And then through again to Pet Stop. They're the experts in pets. They know stuff that you didn't necessarily know that you didn't know, but you needed to. Every element of the store packed with helpful advice on how you choose bowls for cats that don't irritate their whiskers and all that type of stuff. Fantastic communication. And then the final element of this communication is, not just talking about product, but also celebrating your staff. Making your staff feel like they are part of the retail experience, that they're part of the team, celebrating them. And Butlers last year did a really lovely example of taking pictures of their store members, of telling them, telling their stories and putting it out as a piece of point of sale on the shop floor so that people can see it. Really nice, really lovely example. And then through making even more of a feature of that, Tempted, which is a fantastic fashion boutique in Raheny, with a whole wall by the fitting room dedicated to Team Tempted with their pictures and celebrating and telling the stories behind them. Again, there is no limit to the stories that you can tell. This is your voice, and if you don't think you're doing enough of this, by all means, take some of these ideas as inspiration and start building up a communication strategy of your own. And my final example, when we say there's no limit to the communication, the Foxford Woolen Mills is a study in storytelling. Not only have they got the beautiful product, but there's an entire story about the brand. They've dedicated a museum-style space to telling you the history of Foxford Woolen Mills, and then the retail experience is even further enhanced by the fact that the store is on site with the factory, and you can actually see this at the same time. Now, once you visited that Foxford Woolen Mills, you will never feel the same about a Foxford throw ever again, because you've been part of that three-dimensional storytelling. And so if you are doing some kind of factory store where you're telling a visual story, if you have a workshop where stuff's happening, I absolutely would count that as communication as well. So please do show us that. And then my final element, covers a host of different things, but the theme is always the same. It's how are you adding value to the shopping experience? How are you moving beyond product into experiences that add different reasons to come into the store, different reasons to stay for longer, that are educating customers, that are telling people about the brand. And so for this section, you can include any or whichever you're doing. If you are a non-hospitality business, but you have a hospitality offer like a coffee shop or a wine bar, show us. If you're doing personalization, if you're running events, if you're running classes, if you have a community space, if you're doing community activations, if you're doing interesting technology, all of that counts as innovation that adds value. And we absolutely want to see that. And let me give you an example of what that kind of looks like when someone does it with real sense of purpose. As I said, Fabiani entered for many, many years until Louise finally won Store of the Year. And she has always had a focus on increasing the different ways that you can experience a fashion store. So she started as a shoe shop, moved into fashion. She then opened a coffee store, which over the years has expanded to having a food offer. She has a beauty treatment area at the back. And over the years, she's also extended space and added a yoga studio on the top floor, which runs yoga classes inside a fashion store. And if that wasn't enough, this space is also a flexible space so that when yoga classes aren't happening, it's also a personal shopping place where you can book an appointment and they will dress the entire space for you and you will have a personal shopping experience. Now, that to me is a classic example of innovation that is adding personalization, hospitality, events, classes, all of those things together. Great example of what we're looking for. But if you think, well, okay, I'm a pet store, what can I do in hospitality? Well, I love the fact that Pet Stop offered fresh baked goods for dogs. And also they started offering a puppuccino for dogs when they come in, which apparently is foamy cream and the dogs love. There's no excuse for not offering that. If a pet shop can do hospitality, anyone can. I also thought this was a fantastic example of how you can elevate a traditional product area, add experience to something that is normally very functional. You could always say, how on earth do we turn cat litter into an experience? They did it very simply last year. They took out just a row of shelving and they put in a try area where you can spray the different cat litter with this water there and you can see how it clumps and how it works and you can actually try it out for yourself. This was a fantastic example of innovation on an area that normally you would think no innovation is possible. Absolutely brilliant example on how you do that. Again, if we're in the furniture section, you think, how on earth do you add innovation to that? You're selling pillows. Harvey Norman, great example. You get yourself measured on the little kit thing that you can see there. You stand against the wall, they measure your size and they tell you what your perfect pillow is. Fantastic, great use of space, a sort of personalized, customized offer around that, just showing how you can add innovation to anything that's even a standard product range. Through to community elements. And what I thought that was particularly lovely, after COVID, so we didn't do the awards in 2020 because of COVID. In 2021, we were still raging through the pandemic. What I thought was particularly lovely was a pivot that Arnott's had done in Dublin, where they ran care packs for loved ones that you couldn't necessarily still see. And it was beautifully branded, great story around that. These wonderful care packs saying, we love you, and care packs sent to your loved ones at a time when we still couldn't visit people. I thought that was a lovely example of community-focused innovation. Again, other really nice things. They do a big focus on sustainability that the whole of the Selfridges group are doing. Again, all of that is super important. Sustainability is a major part of retail. This is an opportunity to talk about where you're doing some sustainability initiatives. And then again, you know, another element that isn't traditional shopping, but they have a museum pop-up area in Arnott's where they're running exhibitions, heritage exhibitions about the history of Dublin and how Arnott's fits into that. Absolutely fantastic. It turns a department store into a destination, brings Arnott's into the fabric of the city that it's in. Great approach to sort of community meets entertainment. Great example of innovation. Through to personalization, Arboretum in Kilquade having a potting station where you can bring plants to be potted up for yourself. And another innovation which I thought was really lovely that they did last year was create your own wreath, Christmas wreath for their Christmas shop. And they were running, you could either create your own, you could watch the expert there making one, and they were running Instagram live classes at the same time. So creating the space as a kind of broadcast space and a personalization space and a demonstration space all at the same time. Really simple, really easy to do, really effective, wonderful. And again, in the garden sector, Windy Ridge last year, creating this dedicated space in the car park, specifically for classes, gardening classes, barbecue classes, all of that. You know, as customers, we don't just want to buy products. We want to know, how do you use them? How do you get the best out of them? As retailers, you're experts. You can tell us, you can help us. The more you do that, the better it is as an experience. And then through, again, in the jewelry sector, this was a fantastic example. Again, we can see it's during COVID pandemic because people are wearing masks. RJ Barber and Sons in Burr created this entire workshop area when they refurbed their jewelry lab, where you can basically design your own jewelry and you can watch it being made and polished and done there. You can be part of that design process. It's bringing the workshop into the store as a piece of personalized entertainment, education, all of that working together. Great example of innovation. Through to technology, how can we use technology as well to create an added value? Mars Pharmacy last year with SkinCeuticals, with a machine there that actually scans your skin and then can provide recommendations based on your personal skincare. Again, fantastic personalized service, elevating a product into a personalized element, then linking with treatment rooms at the same time. Again, this isn't just a store where you pick up products off a shelf. It's an expert destination that's adding value through services. And McCabe's, again, the competitor business, using technology, this wonderful thematic educational entertainment robot vending system that they have, which is built into the click and collect, done with a sense of style. Again, technology that adds value to that shopping experience. And then again, digital selection on the dermatological skincare, where you can get helpful recommendations on what's the best skincare for you, again with treatment rooms at the same time. All of this is about elevating retail beyond the functional into expert experiences, and these guys all do it fabulously. And my final two examples. Kilkenny Design with a virtual store, which is actually a 3D version of a real store, was a really nice piece of digital innovation. Again, if you're doing anything interesting around digital like that, please show us. We're absolutely counting that. And my final example, I've always loved this, Insomnia with their Ripples machine, where you can take a selfie of yourself and have it printed onto a cup of coffee. And there's me and my cheesy grin enjoying a cup of coffee. What a lovely piece of technology meets personalization, meets innovation. So thank you very much for bearing with me. Those are the 5 elements. And as I said, you will get a copy of this slideshow. There is also a separate guide, and you get a copy of the recording of this. You now have the choice of whether you are going to submit yourself or whether you're going to get assisted by customer perceptions. I'm going to hand across to Lynn, who will run through the process on how they can help you do it and how you actually do the submission process yourself. But anyway, please do take part in it. I'm really looking forward to seeing your submissions. I hope you're excited about it, and I very much hope to see 30 of you at the end of September. So good luck. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Matthew. So hi, everyone. I'm just going to run through really quickly the process for phase 2 of the awards. So as Jean and Matthew have both mentioned, there are 2 very clear routes that we can take this year in terms of how you'd like to proceed. I'm going to explain them both quite concisely now. So I would encourage everyone to take a screenshot of the screen here so you can refer back to it after the presentation when you are deliberating and considering what route you would like to take. So option 1 we have is self-submission for anyone who would like to do the audit submission solo by themselves. And option 2 is the option whereby you can have a customer perceptions facilitator aid you with the process. So just to note that all audits will be judged by Matthew Brown, irrespective of which option you go for, and Matthew will verify and finalize the top 30. So now just to bring you through the 2 options and what they entail. So for option 1, the self-submission route, so when you register for phase 2, customer perceptions will send you an audit report link via email, and you, the retailer, will write up your own audit using Matthew's 5 elements of retail excellence as your guide, and you'll submit it directly onto the platform yourself. So you'll write up all the commentary and you'll submit all your own photographs. Once you submit the audit, it will automatically submit to Matthew for judging and arbitration. So that is the self-submission route. Looking now at the customer perceptions route. So customer perceptions, as you know, have a panel of experienced and trained facilitators who are trained on these 5 elements of retail excellence. So for this route, a facilitator will be selected and allocated to visit your store. And when they arrive, they will introduce themselves to the owner, manager, or person in charge. And you, the retailer, are more than welcome to accompany them or to assist them with their audit. Or of course, you can leave them to complete the audit on their own. Once they've finished the audit in store, they will show the owner, manager, or person in charge their notes and their photographs. They'll then go back and they'll write up their audit online and submit it through our portal. This year, however, Customer Perceptions will give you the opportunity to review the audit before it's submitted for arbitration. So we will send you the facilitator's audit back via email and give you 4 working days to review it and come back with any enhancements, any amends, or any additions. So using this route, the facilitator will do the heavy lifting for you, but you will absolutely have the opportunity to review it beforehand and enhance it or make any additions you so wish. Once you've done this, the final audit will then be submitted to Matthew Brown for judging and arbitration. So they are the 2 routes that we have, the 2 options we have, and I'd encourage everyone to participate in this next phase using either route, whichever suits you best. And I'm just going to bring this back up again, and again encourage everyone just to take a screenshot of the 2 options that we have for you to consider for the next stage. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Lynn and Matthew. I'm sure there's lots of people on this webinar now with loads of thoughts flying through their minds of what they're going to do to hit those 5 elements. Just so everyone's aware, there is you will receive a link with a template to guide you on the 5 elements and how to put that audit report together. And that will be available to you through the portal, and all that information will be sent to you after this call. And my own details will be included, so please do reach out if anyone has any questions. In the interim, if anyone has any questions and they want to pop them in the chat box before we click off, there's no problem at all. I think we're probably good, I'd say. So the closing date for submission of the audit report is the 28th of August. So you have the month of August to put your thinking caps on and gather and rally the team together to come up with some great ideas on all those 5 elements. And that's probably the greatest part of this process, is actually getting to see your team really move outside their comfort zones and do some great things together in making sure you hit those 5 elements. Okay, we'll move. I'll let you go, and thank you so much. We hope to see you in phase 2, and we'll be announcing top 30 in September. So fingers crossed for you all. Thanks a million. Bye-bye.